If a man texts you these 3 words, he's not just interested, he's engaged in a way that reveals a deeper truth about himself and about human connection. Let me be very clear. Relationships are not a game of chance. They are a mirror into who we are, what we value, and what we are willing to tolerate. The moment someone communicates in a way that conveys genuine attention, it's more than words, it's an unspoken declaration of priorities. And understanding this requires not distraction or indulgence in fantasy, but discipline. Observe, reflect, and discern. That is where strength begins. Too often, people chase signals that don't matter. They seek validation in fleeting gestures, in superficial excitement, and they fail to see the patterns that reveal truth. A man who sends the right words does not do so randomly. There is intention, there is a through line, a trajectory that cannot be faked indefinitely. Real commitment is built in the small, consistent acts, in the alignment of word and deed. If he is genuinely invested, his attention is steady. His words, though few, carry weight. That is the marker of seriousness. The marker of a man who is not merely passing through your life, but who recognizes the value of what you bring to it. Do not mistake charm for devotion. Society encourages us to be dazzled by noise, by spectacle, by clever phrasing, by superficial attention. But the reality is brutal in its simplicity, consistency, and respect outlast all else. If a man repeatedly returns to you not out of obligation, not out of compulsion, but because he chooses to, he is revealing a fundamental truth about himself. He sees you. And that seeing is active, not passive. It is deliberate, grounded in understanding, and it honors your autonomy rather than attempting to circumvent it. Anyone can say words. Few can carry the weight of meaning behind them. That is what separates fleeting interest from genuine desire. Strength in understanding relationships comes from self-awareness. You cannot recognize the signals of true interest if you have not first defined your own value. Do not compromise your standards for temporary approval. A man who is genuinely drawn to you will align with who you are, not attempt to reshape you into an expectation of convenience. When he texts you those 3 words, it is not manipulation, it is recognition. And that recognition only resonates if you stand firm in your identity. Never mistake a lack of clarity for humility or patience for weakness. Observe, reflect, decide. That is how one navigates connection with both power and integrity. Furthermore, timing is crucial. Human attention is finite. Energy is finite. A man who consistently chooses to invest in you, without coercion or drama, demonstrates a mastery of priorities. Do not be seduced by occasional grand gestures when everyday attention is absent. Look for the through line. Look for the pattern. That pattern is the truth that casual observation often misses. That pattern is what shows who is serious and who is passing through. And understanding this is not about cynicism, it is about alignment with reality. Relationships that endure are not built on excitement alone, they are built on the gravitas of understanding and consistent, deliberate action. Now, consider this: when a man communicates these words, it is more than an emotional signal. It is a reflection of his willingness to step forward and declare a small but undeniable truth. That is courage. That is intention. And those qualities are rare because they require him to risk vulnerability and acknowledge the value of what he is engaging with. Most people avoid this risk. Most people hide behind ambiguity because ambiguity allows them to avoid accountability. A man who chooses clarity, even in 3 small words, demonstrates a fundamental willingness to meet life and connection head on. And that is what you want to recognize, nurture, and respect. Finally, do not underestimate your own role in this dynamic. To receive, to recognize, to respond appropriately requires the same qualities you demand from others: clarity, consistency, and self-respect. Do not bend, do not chase, do not fill gaps with illusions of affection. Stand firm and let your presence be a filter that allows only the truly committed to approach. Strength is not in control or manipulation. Strength is in clarity, in unwavering observation, and in deliberate action. And when a man meets you with words that matter, it is a mirror. You are seeing reflected in him the truth that only emerges when both parties engage with seriousness, integrity, and presence. So remember this: those 3 words are more than just a text. They are a signal. They are a test of intention, of alignment, of recognition. Observe, reflect, stand firm, and only then will you truly understand the measure of his interest and equally the measure of your own strength. There is no substitute for clarity, no shortcut to discernment, no escape from the responsibility of knowing your value. And when you act from that understanding, you move not just with power, but with wisdom. That is the foundation of every meaningful connection, every deliberate action, and every life lived with focus and integrity. Clarity of intent is the single most powerful force you can wield in your life, yet so few truly understand what it means. Most people drift through their days reacting to circumstances, responding to noise, and allowing their choices to be dictated by what feels easy, comfortable, or immediately gratifying. They confuse business with progress, distraction with purpose, and they pay the price in wasted time, misaligned relationships, and unrealized potential. To live a life of strength, To operate at the level where your actions resonate, your mind must first cut through the fog and see clearly what you want, why you want it, and what you will tolerate along the way. Without clarity of intent, all effort is scattered and all energy is dissipated. Intent is not a vague notion. It is not a wish or a hope. It is a declaration, a commitment, and a framework through which every decision passes. When you are clear about your intent, you operate with a kind of inevitability. Your words, actions, and choices all line up because they are filtered through the lens of purpose. You do not hesitate. You do not waste energy on uncertainty. You know what matters and you ruthlessly prioritize it. Most people avoid this kind of clarity because it is uncomfortable. Clarity demands truth. It forces you to confront what you want and what you refuse to settle for. It forces you to face the parts of your life that are weak, inconsistent, or misaligned. But it is only through this confrontation that real power emerges. Consider relationships, work, or personal growth. In each case, lack of clarity of intent is the source of confusion, frustration, and failure. People pursue relationships they do not truly value, engage in work that does not serve their goals, and chase achievements that are not theirs to claim. They spread themselves thin, hoping that effort alone will create results. It does not. Intent is the compass that guides effort. Without it, energy dissipates like water through a sieve. When you know your intent, everything changes. You no longer participate in life passively. You act deliberately. You notice who supports your purpose and who hinders it. You make choices that reinforce your path rather than distract from it. Clarity of intent also demands discipline in communication. Words are powerful, but without intent, they are empty. When you speak, when you act, when you move, everything must align with your underlying purpose. This is why people sense authenticity instinctively. It is why actions that lack intent feel hollow, even when they are performed with effort or flair. Human beings respond to the clarity of your presence, the decisiveness of your energy, the alignment of your actions with your goals. When your intent is sharp, people notice it, they respect it, they respond to it, and that is the foundation of influence, leadership, and genuine connection. But clarity of intent is not static. It is not something you declare once and forget. It requires constant attention, evaluation, and refinement. Life is unpredictable, circumstances change, and challenges arise that test your focus. To maintain clarity, you must consistently ask yourself, why am I doing this? Does this align with what I truly value? Am I tolerating compromise where I should be standing firm? Am I acting out of obligation, fear, or distraction rather than deliberate choice? The answers are not always comfortable, but they are necessary. Only through this rigorous self-examination does clarity deepen and strength emerge. Moreover, clarity of intent is inseparable from responsibility. You cannot claim clarity and then blame others for misalignment. You cannot assert purpose and then ignore the work required to achieve it. Intent without action is meaningless. The clarity you cultivate must translate into consistent, measurable steps. It is manifested in discipline, focus, and the refusal to accept mediocrity. This is why so few attain it. Most people fear the burden of responsibility that comes with true clarity. But if you embrace it, you gain something far greater than comfort. You gain control over the direction of your life. Intent also shapes perception. When you are clear, you no longer allow external chaos to dictate your mood, your energy, or your choices. You are grounded, not reactive. You assess situations with calm precision. You engage with people and opportunities based on their alignment with your purpose rather than their ability to distract, flatter, or seduce you. This is not cold calculation. It is disciplined engagement. It is the difference between wandering aimlessly and moving with power, between drifting with circumstance and commanding your life with authority. Finally, clarity of intent transforms challenges into opportunities. When life is uncertain, when obstacles arise, when others try to pull you off course, clarity provides a reference point. It allows you to see through the noise, to act decisively, and to focus relentlessly. Without it, challenges overwhelm you. With it, every obstacle becomes a test of alignment, every difficulty a chance to refine purpose, and every setback a signal to sharpen focus. In the end, clarity of intent is not a luxury. It is a necessity for anyone who refuses to settle for mediocrity, who refuses to be carried by circumstance, and who refuses to allow life to happen to them. It is the lens through which power, discipline, and influence are born. When your intent is clear, your actions are inevitable, your relationships are meaningful, and your life is yours to command. And the moment you embrace that clarity, you step into a realm of responsibility, courage, and unwavering purpose that transforms everything you touch. Consistency over time is the hidden force that separates fleeting effort from real achievement, shallow promises from enduring results, and distraction from mastery. Most people are drawn to the illusion of action. The flash of excitement, the burst of energy, the immediate gratification of doing something that feels productive. They mistake this for progress, yet it dissolves quickly because it is not sustained. True power, true influence, and true transformation are not born from isolated effort. They emerge from persistent, Unwavering action aligned with purpose, day after day, week after week, year after year. There is no substitute for it. Nothing else creates results that last. Think about it. In life, in work, in relationships, anyone can show up once, speak eloquently once, or perform brilliantly once. It is easy to dazzle people with one moment of brilliance. It is easy to chase attention with spectacle or charm. But one moment is not enough. One burst of effort is meaningless if it is not backed by a pattern of behavior that proves reliability, commitment, and integrity. People who succeed, people who leave a mark, are not extraordinary because of rare flashes of energy. They are extraordinary because they are consistent, because they show up, because they endure when the novelty fades and the challenge becomes uncomfortable. Consistency over time is not glamorous. It does not provide instant feedback or applause. It is quiet, often invisible, and it requires discipline when the world tempts you with shortcuts, excuses, and distractions. It is the daily grind, the repeated effort, the invisible work that lays the foundation for what appears effortless to others. Without it, talent remains dormant, potential is wasted, and opportunities slip away because the people who succeed are those who persevere when others falter. This is not a theory. It is observable in every field of human endeavor. Look closely, and patterns emerge. Mastery requires repetition, trust requires reliability, influence requires predictability in action. In relationships, consistency over time reveals true character. One can be charming for a day, generous for a week, or attentive for a moment, but only sustained attention and care demonstrate genuine commitment. A person who is present consistently, who communicates, who acts in alignment with their words, shows who they truly are. Patterns cannot be faked indefinitely. If you are discerning, you notice these patterns immediately. People respect and are drawn to those who are reliable, who show up repeatedly, and who demonstrate that their words are not empty. Conversely, inconsistency erodes trust. It creates doubt, instability, and dissatisfaction. In life as in relationships, patterns outweigh promises. Consistency over time also requires a deep sense of personal responsibility. You cannot rely on motivation alone. Motivation is fleeting, it rises and falls like the tide. Discipline, however, is constant. Discipline sustains action when motivation wanes. Consistency demands that you keep going even when you feel tired, when you are bored, when you face obstacles or criticism. It requires you to align your daily choices with your long-term goals, even when those choices are uncomfortable or inconvenient. The people who achieve the most are rarely those who are most talented. They are those who refuse to stop. They continue to take action even when the immediate reward is invisible, because they trust the process and understand that results compound over time. Consider the compound effect. Small actions repeated consistently create exponential results. One step taken repeatedly may seem insignificant in isolation, yet over weeks and months, it accumulates into something extraordinary. Knowledge builds, skills sharpen, habits solidify, and credibility grows. This is the power of consistency over time. Those who are patient and disciplined eventually surpass those who rely on sporadic brilliance or luck. Life is long, and the long game rewards those who endure with precision and commitment. Consistency over time is also a measure of character. It reveals who you are when no one is watching, when challenges arise, and when it is easier to quit. It distinguishes the strong from the weak, the serious from the careless, the intentional from the accidental. It is a reflection of your values, your integrity, and your ability to live in alignment with your principles. When you cultivate consistency, you cultivate credibility. People trust you. Opportunities find you. Your presence carries weight because it is reliable, predictable, and dependable. Yet consistency does not mean rigidity. It is not blind repetition. It is deliberate, mindful action aligned with purpose. You can adjust your approach, refine your methods, and grow over time, but the commitment to show up, to act, and to follow through must remain unwavering. The world is full of excuses for inconsistency, fear, doubt, distraction, fatigue. To overcome them, you must develop mental toughness, cultivate patience, and prioritize what matters above what feels comfortable. Only then does consistency translate into results that endure, relationships that thrive, and a life that commands respect. In the end, consistency over time is a quiet power that others often overlook, yet it is the foundation of everything meaningful. It is the invisible thread that links effort to success, action to results, and intention to accomplishment. It is the reason some people achieve greatness while others falter. It is the bridge between potential and reality. To master it is to master life itself. And the moment you commit to showing up consistently, to acting with purpose day after day, week after week, year after year, you step into a realm where results become inevitable, respect becomes earned, and excellence becomes your standard. Respecting boundaries is one of the most overlooked, yet crucial aspects of strength, influence, and meaningful connection. Most people fail to understand that boundaries are not limitations to avoid or obstacles to bypass. They are the markers of integrity, the foundation of trust, and the structure that allows relationships, work, and life itself to function effectively. To respect boundaries is not merely to be polite, it is to act with discipline, clarity, and moral courage. It is to recognize that every person, including yourself, has limits, needs, and values that must be honored if interactions are to be genuine, productive, and sustainable. Ignoring boundaries leads to conflict, resentment, and instability. Honoring them creates clarity, respect, and long-term alignment. The first principle of respecting boundaries is understanding that they exist to define what is acceptable and what is not. Every individual carries with them a set of rules, often unspoken, that reflect their values, needs, and emotional limits. To overstep these boundaries is to communicate disregard, to assert your will over another's autonomy, and to weaken trust. A person who consistently disrespects boundaries will encounter resistance, friction, and eventual rejection, even if their intentions are superficially positive. Respecting boundaries, on the other hand, communicates awareness, empathy, and self-control. It demonstrates that you can engage with others without compromising their dignity or your own. Boundaries are not static, they require observation, reflection, and adjustment. In relationships, they manifest in many forms: the amount of emotional energy someone can give or receive, the time they allocate for work versus personal life, the level of personal information they choose to share, and the standards they hold for how they are treated. To respect boundaries, you must pay attention to these signals and respond appropriately. This demands patience, mindfulness, and the ability to delay gratification. It requires a strength of character that resists the temptation to manipulate, coerce, or bypass the limits of others for short-term gain. Respect is not passive, it is deliberate action aligned with understanding. Moreover, respecting boundaries begins with self-respect. You cannot honor others' limits if you do not know or enforce your own. Those who lack self-boundaries allow others to overstep, creating chaos, confusion, and a lack of control. They confuse compliance with respect, submission with humility. To cultivate strength, you must first define your own non-negotiables, what you will tolerate, what aligns with your values, and what you refuse to compromise on. Only then can you navigate the world with integrity, engaging with others in a way that honors both their autonomy and your own. Boundaries are a reflection of self-worth. Weak boundaries invite disregard, strong boundaries demand respect. Consistency in respecting boundaries over time is critical. One instance of overstepping may be forgiven, but patterns are remembered and judged. People who consistently honor boundaries build credibility, trust, and influence. Those who violate them erode goodwill and credibility, even if they demonstrate charm, skill, or intelligence. Respecting boundaries is not conditional on convenience. It is a constant principle, a standard that guides your actions, communication, and decisions. This consistency is what distinguishes reliability from unpredictability, seriousness from casual engagement, and leadership from mere presence. Another essential aspect is understanding that boundaries are not walls, they are channels that allow connection to flow safely and purposefully. Respecting them does not mean avoiding challenge or sheltering yourself or others from discomfort. Boundaries are the framework within which growth occurs. They allow you to engage authentically, confront conflict constructively, and navigate relationships with honesty rather than manipulation. The person who respects boundaries understands when to step forward and when to step back, when to challenge and when to support, always guided by a recognition of limits and a commitment to alignment. Discipline and awareness are key. Respecting boundaries requires active listening, observation of behavior, and careful attention to both verbal and non-verbal cues. It is the difference between imposing your will and engaging with intention. People who respect boundaries understand that power is not the ability to control others, but the ability to act in alignment with principles while navigating the autonomy of everyone involved. Strength is measured not in dominance, but in the restraint and responsibility to act appropriately. Finally, respecting boundaries over time builds resilience and stability in every area of life. It creates environments where people feel safe to communicate, contribute, and collaborate without fear of violation. It reinforces integrity, cultivates trust, and fosters relationships that endure because they are grounded in mutual respect rather than fleeting convenience. Those who consistently respect boundaries demonstrate wisdom, patience, and insight. They attract others who are similarly disciplined and aligned. Conversely, those who ignore boundaries attract chaos, conflict, and instability, often leaving them isolated despite outward success. In the end, respecting boundaries is not negotiable for anyone seeking lasting influence, meaningful connection, or personal strength. It is a mark of character, discipline, and clarity of purpose. It requires awareness, patience, self-respect, and a willingness to act deliberately even when it is difficult. Boundaries are the architecture of trust, the scaffolding of influence, and the measure of integrity. To honor them is to honor yourself and others, to create alignment, and to operate with a level of presence and authority that commands respect naturally. Those who master this understand a simple truth: boundaries are not restrictions. They are the framework for power, clarity, and enduring connection. Self-value is not optional. It is not a luxury or a fleeting sentiment. It is the foundation upon which every meaningful choice, every successful relationship, and every deliberate action is built. Without a clear understanding of your worth, without a steadfast commitment to your own standards, life becomes a series of compromises, distractions, and regrets. Too many people drift through existence allowing others to define what they deserve, what they can tolerate, and what they must accept. This is weakness disguised as humility, submission dressed as kindness, and compliance masquerading as flexibility. True strength begins with knowing your value and refusing to settle for less than what aligns with your principles and purpose. Self-value requires clarity. You must understand who you are, what you stand for, and what you are willing to accept and refuse in your interactions, decisions, and commitments. This is not arrogance. It is not entitlement. It is reality. You are the central agent in your life. The way you define yourself and your standards sets the framework for how others engage with you. If you waver, hesitate, or allow external pressures to dictate your worth, you invite misalignment, disappointment, and exploitation. People respond not to what you say you deserve, but to what you enforce consistently in your choices and behaviors. Value is not a declaration, it is a practice. Standards are the practical manifestation of self-value. They are the non-negotiables that govern your time, energy, and attention. They determine which relationships, opportunities, and endeavors merit engagement and which must be declined. High standards are not arbitrary. They are aligned with purpose, integrity, and long-term outcomes. They act as filters, allowing only those and only that which reinforces your growth, well-being, and alignment to enter your life. Weak standards, by contrast, invite compromise, distraction, and mediocrity. They blur lines between what is constructive and what is destructive, between respect and exploitation. Standards are not walls, they are the markers of intentionality, the architecture of a life that commands respect. To cultivate self-value is to cultivate discipline. You cannot proclaim worth without acting in accordance with it. It demands the courage to say no when pressure mounts, to walk away when respect is absent, and to maintain focus when others attempt to derail your trajectory. It requires reflection, self-awareness, and the ability to resist the temptation of short-term gratification in favor of long-term alignment. Those who understand their worth do not seek validation from others because their authority is internal. Their energy is focused, their decisions deliberate, and their presence inherently commanding. Others sense it immediately, whether consciously or unconsciously, because self-value radiates through action more than words. Consistency in enforcing your standards is essential. One instance of compromise may seem minor, but repeated lapses erode credibility, self-respect, and power. True self-value is reflected not in occasional resolve, but in unwavering adherence to principles across all circumstances. It requires resilience when faced with challenges, clarity when confronted with temptation, and courage when others attempt to test or diminish you. People will attempt to manipulate, charm, or pressure, but those with defined value and standards are unshakable because they act from a foundation stronger than circumstance. Their boundaries are not negotiable because they have internalized the principle that compromising self-worth diminishes life itself. Self-value also dictates the quality of relationships, both personal and professional. When you honor your worth, you attract those who are similarly disciplined, aligned, and serious. Those who attempt to exploit, manipulate, or drain energy are naturally filtered out. This is not rejection of humanity, it is intentionality. Every interaction, every connection, every engagement must reinforce your purpose and respect your value. Relationships thrive not when you compromise for convenience, approval, or fear of isolation, but when both parties operate with mutual recognition of worth and aligned standards. This is the difference between superficial connection and enduring loyalty, between temporary engagement and meaningful partnership. Importantly, self-value is not static. It requires ongoing reflection, assessment, and refinement. Life changes. Challenges arise. People evolve. Your standards must adapt without compromise to principles. They must become sharper, not weaker, as you encounter complexity. Those who fail to maintain or refine standards gradually erode their own authority and allow external chaos to dictate internal peace. Those who commit to this ongoing practice operate with power, integrity, and focus. They are not distracted by fleeting trends, momentary desires, or societal pressures. They live deliberately, act intentionally, and achieve consistently. Finally, self-value and standards are the ultimate form of empowerment. They allow you to act decisively, pursue ambition without apology, and navigate life without being derailed by manipulation or uncertainty. When you know your worth and enforce your standards, you operate from a position of authority over your own life. You command respect effortlessly because it is earned through alignment, discipline, and visible integrity. You do not beg for recognition, validation, or permission. You create conditions in which meaningful success, genuine relationships, and purposeful action naturally manifest. In the end, self-value and standards are not negotiable if you aspire to live deliberately, act with power, and achieve outcomes that endure. They are the framework through which you define your identity, your influence, and your legacy. Weakness is tolerated by those who fail to understand this. Strength is embodied by those who embrace it fully. To cultivate it is to take responsibility for your life, to refuse compromise where compromise undermines integrity, and to act in alignment with purpose consistently. It is the most profound act of discipline, clarity, and courage, and it is the ultimate determinant of who you become, how others engage with you, and the results you create in every sphere of life.